Kai-Fu and I have been talking backstage, and we were deciding, should we give you guys some sweet dreams tonight or some nightmares? And we decided maybe a little bit of both. We have a lot to discuss, what the future looks like, what we're building right now and how it will impact us in the future. So really excited for this conversation. Kai-Fu, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Allison.
So you've said AI is the biggest breakthrough for humanity. It is also the final step to understanding ourselves. So I'm curious, Kai-Fu, why do you think that? And what exactly does that mean, to understanding ourselves?
I think I wrote that in my PhD application in 1983. And yes, at the time, I thought once we figure out once we build an AI, we'll know how we think. And that was what drove me to go into AI. At the time was basically AI winter. But what I found out today is I think we can build something much more powerful than human. Not necessarily AGI, but much more powerful than human. And it doesn't have to follow exactly our brain. So the good news is we can build something much more powerful than I thought. The bad news is that it may not give us as much insight about how the brain works. We still have to rely on the cognitive scientists and the brain scientists in the world.
So wait, are you saying that there's something beyond AGI? I thought artificial general intelligence was like the end-all, be-all endpoint. When are we going to reach that, and what's beyond?
Yeah, AGI is defined to be a superset of human intelligence. Everything the human can do, AI can do. I think it's a very narrow-minded and narcissistic view. Because we are humans, so when you watch movies, you want aliens want to become humans, pets want to become humans, monkeys want to become humans, but they don't. You know, AI is this giant machine that gets better with more GPUs and compute and data. It can do so many more tasks, so much better than people, but it doesn't mean it does everything people do because their brain operates differently from our brain. You know, we don't compare, marathon runners with cars, right? And I don't think we need to compare AI with us, even though it is exhibiting a lot of intelligence. So I'm certain, so if we look at what can humans do and what can AI do, 5 years ago, humans can do a lot, AI can do a bit. There's some overlap. And today, what AI can do is gotten larger than what humans can do, but it's not a complete superset. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, if the human circle of what human capability is this big, the AI will be the size of Earth. But it still may not do what everything we can do. It may not have awareness, love, empathy, compassion, or other skills.
So something superhuman, greater than us all, that has no compassion. It sounds like a great, great world we're building. Great.
And it can fake compassion.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, boy. OK, so we have a lot to discuss. You have startups. You have a startup you're running. You are a VC, have been investing for years. You've also worked at just about every major tech company under the sun, who's a leader in AI. So lots and lots to dig into there. But first, I want to talk about 01.ai,
okay.
Your startup, of which you're the CEO and the founder.
Yeah.
Spun up about exactly a year ago. You had no team. Today, you're $1 billion valuation. No revenue? Some revenue?
Some revenue.
Some revenue. Some revenue, on track for revenue. More revenue. So what is it, and what is its place in this AI world?
I felt that people in China cannot access ChatGPT. Actually, many of you may not know this, but OpenAI blocks China from ability to access. So I feel that China shouldn't be left out of this revolution. And I felt that also I strongly believe, as I stated in AI Superpowers, that US will lead in breakthrough innovations, but China is better at execution. And I thought a year ago the time has come for China to prove its prowess in execution. And rather than investing in someone, I would do it myself this time. So that was the initial attempt. The other is kind of a frustration that the field is moving toward more closed. Despite its namesake, OpenAI is not open at all. It's probably the most closed company in the world, even compared with Google and Grok and Meta and others. So I felt, we need to work with academics. We want to work with open source community and entrepreneurs and people like yourselves, and that we should not only make AI work great and make it create value, but also make it accessible to everyone. And if the best company in the bunch is closing all of its technologies, never open source, don't publish, then we can't engage and bring in all the brilliant people in the world. So we decided we would also take an open approach, which is a bit unusual because, US is known to be, American companies are known to be more open than Chinese companies, but we've taken an open approach. To date, every best model we have built, from text model to multimodal model, we've made available in open source. They're on Hugging Face and other sites because we felt we wanted to change the way people think and make it accessible to more people. And then maybe lastly, what's unique is that I feel that I'm kind of seeing deja vu, that what happened with PC and the phone, I'm seeing again with AI. I know people love to talk about AGI, but practically speaking about making money, it's very analogous, right? PC was creating a stack from CPU to operating system, to applications, and then to servers and to cloud, and then to the end user and to business and to C and to B. Basically, that whole stack made Microsoft the amazing company and made them an incredible amount of money. And the phone more or less did that for Google and Apple. And I think the same opportunity exists. But I feel a lot of the LLM companies out there are run by researchers who care only about making a great model. And I think that science fair phase needs to end. No matter how much brilliance and great demos you make, at some point there is a point of reckoning when investors are going to say, what do you have to show for yourself? What's your P&L? What's your revenue? What's your growth? When do you break even? And I've learned a lot of that myself, having been a researcher from the beginning. But now that I've been a VC for 14 years, I feel like I can make this thing make money. So we're not spending a lot of time on it, but we're building the company with the ambition that this company will have infrastructure, model, applications, and also data working as a stack. And we've come up with a number of ways which we think in the future will make money. And we don't do it because we want the money, but we do it because we see the need to continue to raise money to afford our GPUs. And we want to do it by not creating a bubble or promising the moon or through demos. We want to do it through actual revenue growth and profit over time.
Sounds very expensive. Sounds like something venture capital alone cannot fund. I mean, you have Google with gazillions of dollars at their disposal, Meta as well. I mean, how do you even compete in that world?
To give you an example, when you think about GPUs and models, most of you probably just think, okay, they've got so many GPUs, then they can do great. But actually, Google has over 2,000 people just in its DeepMind division. And those 2,000 people are competing for GPUs and resources. And Google's approach is let 100 flowers bloom. And that's why OpenAI leaped ahead by betting on one approach with its much less GPU than Google had years ago. Now they both have a lot. So I think the approach we think is we want a very small AI modeling team and a very large infrastructure team. Because if you have too many researchers and a culture where everybody can try ideas, you'll quickly run out of money as a startup, as you said. But if we're very focused, we want these researchers to read every paper, to understand every technology, to discuss things theoretically, argue from first principles, and then build some experiments to fight it out. And then before we really spend the expensive GPU, we will have either reached consensus or I would have to make a decision. So this is a very different culture than what Google and other companies try to do. We're basically trying to gather lots of data and make key decision so we don't take as much GPU. As an example, you may have read a paper by Stephen Levy about Huawei and the Polar Code. I won't go into details here, but basically Huawei asked its engineers to read all the papers, and they found this Turkish professor who invented something called the Polar Code, and that made all the difference and gave Huawei its leadership position in 5G. We're taking that same approach to be very, very diligent to save GPU. Then the infrastructure is one of the least appreciated but most important technologies because these GPUs don't work very well. They break 4%. 4% of the time each GPU breaks. So if you have a cluster of 10,000 GPUs, half of your month is gone because the cluster, every time a GPU goes down, the whole cluster goes down. You've heard Jensen Huang talk about how Blackwell has ways to recover. Well, we can recover today by patching H800s that we have in the company. And also, there's a metric called MFU, which measures the model flop utilization. Most LLM companies are around 40%. Google, NVIDIA are slightly better, but we're at 63%. So we basically, I truly believe that necessity is the mother of innovation. And the necessity for a poor company like us compared to a Google OpenAI force us to be diligent about the approach to take, to be decisive about which approach to take, and also to build a large infrastructure team to reduce the cost of compute because we just don't have that many.
Got it. Okay, well, big journey ahead. You're also called the tech prophet, so I want to get some prophecies here from you while I have you.
Okay.
But let's look back. You've written 2 books, both sort of predicting the future in their different ways. Superpowers was sort of the US versus China and who will win. Who will win? Where are we now? Where are both? And were you right?
The last answer to your last question is, of course, yes. The prediction I made in my book was, first, data is the new oil. That makes all the difference. And I think, look what generative AI is, right? Take all the data in the world to train using generative as a way to solve the objective function problem. Second prediction in the book was that US was better at innovation, breakthrough. China was better at execution. And we saw that in the earlier AI days. And in the recent Gen AI, I think we're just about to see it. I think we'll have to see how this works out. But certainly, taking my company as an example, we were 8 years behind a year ago. Now we're probably less than 1 year behind of the top American company. So at least so far, we've been executing. Of course, the last 1 year is the hardest, right? Because think about what OpenAI has achieved in 1 year. So we don't view it in any kind of a hubris or taking for granted. But we have closed the gap because we did execute better in the past year in my company and in other Chinese companies. So I believe in that still. The other point I made was, well, when can US have an unassailable advantage over China? And the point I made in the book was when the technology became invented by some corporate company, by some corporate entity, not academics, because academics will publish, and that corporate entity chooses to stop publishing, which we are seeing now. So it's definitely plausible that US can extend its leadership because OpenAI and to a lesser extent Google have stopped publishing. But we'll see. So are China and the US headed on different paths here? Will they even be competitive in their respective AI markets, or will there be the China option for the world to engage with on AI and the US version? And then if that's the case, how the heck do you regulate this all if they're separate things? Yeah, we're well beyond that, and we're in our parallel universe. This is not ideal. None of us like it, I think, but it is what it is. And given it's a parallel universe, I think we're going to see a lot of interesting American solutions that won't make it to China, and interesting Chinese solution that won't make it to US. So as an entrepreneur or VC or just a curious mind, it would make sense to look at both worlds to see what's exciting in each one, because while you compete in your world, whether it's the American world or the Chinese world, if you have the advantage of actually having studied the other parallel universe, you will have superpowers in the work that you do. But we don't have any unrealistic expectation that US and Chinese AI companies will actually compete in the same country, unless it's in a small number of countries that are friendly with both countries.
When you look at the world's biggest tech companies today, you've worked for at least half of them, Apple, Microsoft, Google. Who is still on top in 10 years or even 5 years? Who falls? And which startups kind of overtake them?
Yeah, I think on the US side, I mean, right now, Microsoft is a darling, and Apple's doing stuff, and Google is frustrated and a lot of negative comment, and then OpenAI is the upstarter. I would say that despite my earlier comments on OpenAI, I am very bullish on their future. They've really done an admirable and unbelievable job executing. Even today, GPT-4 is still the gold standard. You see Gemini Ultra and Claude 3 and make these claims, but if you use these models, GPT-4 and GPT-4 Turbo is unbelievably good and a great balance for performance and cost. So I would say, you know, OpenAI will likely be a $1 trillion company in the not too distant future.
How distant, or how not so distant?
2-3 years.
$1 trillion in 2 or 3 years.
I think that's the likely outcome. Of course, they could misexecute, or some other company could do a great thing. But despite my concerns about their lack of openness, I have great admiration for them. So I would, if I could invest in any of them, which I can't, but if I could, I would do OpenAI. NVIDIA is another one that's a safe bet. It's obviously extremely expensive, but the processors they have and the CUDA and the technologies they have on the ecosystem and the libraries, it's very hard for a competitor to dislodge them. They're obviously very expensive, but you know, most of you know, in secondary stock, you buy high and sell higher rather than buy low. None of these companies are going to go low. Microsoft has executed brilliantly. I am a little bit disappointed at Microsoft Copilot because it is gluing Gen AI to an existing product that is a dinosaur that should be thrown out. But I understand why they did what they did, but I would rather see a new product that throws away Microsoft Office and that has AI do most of the writing and human just kind of sit in the back seat tweaking it a little bit. But nevertheless, I think Microsoft's done an amazing job on selecting OpenAI and partnering with them. And I think Satya has demonstrated unbelievable leadership in trying to bring in Sam Altman, and then when that couldn't, gracefully letting him stay, and now getting Mustafa. It's just amazing to see. Satya has been the most phenomenal CEO. Google, I'm still somewhat bullish, despite all the issues we all know. It is still currently has the largest density of AI talent in the world by far. More than OpenAI, more than Microsoft, more than the others. So I guess the question is, can they start to execute better?
So be that as they may, the incumbents are certainly in great position, each of them, with their war chests of cash. But it's a new era for entrepreneurs as well, yourself included. If you were you are an entrepreneur, where do you start if you want to get into this AI world? And what kind of wealth creation are we talking about here? I mean, wealth and equity is already so vast. You're talking about this company, OpenAI, can be worth trillions almost overnight, a couple of years. That's very fast. What is the trajectory here for wealth creation, for capitalism in general, for the haves and the have-nots?
Well, this is by far the most advanced and most amazing technology compared to anything by a factor of 10, right? So if we look backwards, electricity, internet, PC, mobile is nothing compared to this. So if you subscribe to that view, right, then there's no reason why any of the companies we mentioned, large or small, couldn't go up by 10x, right, including ours, hopefully even more because we're cheaper. But the mature companies, I don't see why they couldn't go up by 10x because I think this is just so, and also many of the problems that plague these systems like hallucination, I can predict that they will be more or less solved in a year and a half or so. So yes, they hold things back, but I'm very bullish on these technologies moving forward. Of course, on your other question, I'm also worried that a few big players will dominate more than ever before, and that if one company dominates, it would be a really horrible thing. If 5 or 10 companies are all doing better, that's a lot better. But even in that case, it does create an accelerated pace of job displacement, an accelerated set of difficulties for smaller entrepreneurs. If you could only raise $5 or $10 million and you decide to do an app, take a look at Jasper, right? They built a great app at the time, but the foundation model sucked in all the learnings, and the app became of much more questionable value. And that is not even by evil planning by the platform provider. It's just the natural power of the fundamental models to suck in all that you feed it. So that creates, I think, serious challenges for have-nots and also researchers. If you're talking about lack of GPUs, I mean, I try to cry to you how few GPUs we have, but we have 100 times more than 99.9% of universities. So what will professors do? So the haves and have-nots have become at a historical gap where professors, entrepreneurs, and people who don't have the skill sets, and people who are working on white-collar, relatively routine jobs, I worry a lot about the disparities for them. And that's, again, why on 01.AI I chose by making this great technology accessible as our mission. And the underlying emphasis is on the word accessible, because I think all of us should do what we can to avoid the case of an extreme haves and have-nots.
And job displacement, I think we all know this is coming. You had said around 2017, you thought in 10 to 15 years, about 40 to 50% of all jobs would be replaced by AI. Yeah. Is that still an accurate timeline in your opinion? What the heck is everyone going to do when they don't have a job in 3 years, if so?
It's actually uncannily accurate. People have criticized me for being too aggressive in the 2017, 18, 19. And I was a little nervous at the time. But when Gen AI came out, I think everybody's on the bandwagon and believing that is the correct pace. And I think the white-collar jobs will go a lot faster. Blue-collar job may be a little slower because more people are shifting to the software-only displacement. And I think it's a very, very significant problem. And I think finally some governments are waking up and realize they have to do something about this. And in my AI 2041, I outlined a number of creative, maybe not necessarily workable solutions that was intended to get people thinking. So get a copy of the book.
So we've got a lot ahead. Somehow we're out of time and we need to let these people eat. But the one question I do want to leave everybody with is, can we get some hope here? How should we prepare our kids to live alongside machines?
Right.
If this is what's coming and it's coming fast, let alone all of our jobs, we need to be thinking about how to work this in and help employees and help everybody. But what do we do for our kids when they say, what should I be when I grow up? Yeah,
I think first thing we all have to do and influence all the people around us is to stop this nonsense about kids are using ChatGPT to cheat. Right? This is not cheating any more than using Word or Photoshop. The kids, when they go into the workplace, are going to be measured based on the final output of their work. They're not going to be measured on, well, did you use ChatGPT? Did you use Google search? So I think we need to encourage people to harness AI and use all the tools so that they can be the best that they can be. And also, it's a great guide to what things they can aspire to and what things are not worth following. I think that's incredibly important, is to harness, embrace AI, and stop trying to catch people cheating. This is not cheating. This is producing great output. It's not any more cheating than Fortune journalists using Microsoft Word spell checking, or a a fortune photographer using Photoshop. This is ChatGPT. It's a tool. Everyone should use it and learn from it, and embrace it. And the second thing is that I think there needs to be a belief that there is something unique about our humanity. I continue to hold out that we have a soul, the machine never will, that we have compassion and empathy. We have emotions and the ability to love. We have the ability to connect to other people and create trust and win trust. And that all of you know, as successful people in your companies, your success is built more than anything, more than your technical skills, more than your business skills. The most important skill that I tell any young people for the last 20 years is that winning trust from other people is most important. And winning trust is about authenticity, about teamwork, about sharing, and it's about high EQ, not just the IQ. So I believe in that holds out something that we can all embrace. You don't have to be a genius to have a high EQ. You don't have to be a genius to love and be compassionate. And in both of my books, I talk about that as the essence of our humanity. And I continue to believe it. Do I think AI can fake it? Yes. Do I think people will accept the faking AI, at least for the next 50 years? No. So that's long enough for your kids to survive and figure out the next step for their kids.
Okay, our kids will survive and they'll figure out something else later. Thank you so much, Kai-Fu. I wish this had been an hour. It was such a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you, Alice.
Enjoy your meals.